Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Be Filled. I am ecstatic. We are already down in episode number 3. Can you believe it? In season 2. Today I have a fabulous guest with me, Mr. Matt Fucarino. I know you guys have heard me talk about Matt in a couple of the episodes, so it would only be right if I let you get to meet the man with the plan himself. We all look up to him. We love Matt at our church. He is one that gives us all guidance and discipleship and being such a great servant. And we're just so excited for him to stop by and to hopefully fill our cups today. So I'm going to give the floor over to Matt and let him introduce himself, and then we'll dive right into some conversation.
Well, hello, everyone. It's a real honor to join you. Again, my name is Matthew Fucarino, and I am the proud dad of 3 children. They're 13, 8, and 11. I have a lovely wife named Lauren, who is a vibrant worshiper. She writes worship music. She's a music therapist and also serves in many ways at Trinity New Life Church. So it's, again, such a privilege to be on this show. I do work as an emergency physician, and I'm honored to also serve part-time at our church on staff as a position called discipleship director, which means a few different things, but mostly overseeing our small groups, which we call discipleship communities. And excited to talk about this book, and got a chance to read it last year. It was released last year, I believe, so I had to
Yeah, look at you. Okay. Yeah, come with your copy.
refresh myself about some of the content. So I made some notes
Yeah.
about what stood out to me.
Yeah.
We can talk about other things too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great. Well, great. Yeah. No, I love that y'all serve as a family. And that's always been a blessing. We know when we say Fucarinos are here, everybody gets so excited about you guys. We just love you guys so much at the church. And yeah, so I know you said you had, do you play any instruments, Matt? I've never seen you with any kind of instruments. It's always Lauren. Do you do anything musically?
I do play acoustic guitar, but not very well. I don't have
Oh,
a, and
okay.
truth be told, I have.
Oh,
If I
think I lost
put
my.
in time, I think I might be able to play with the team, but
Okay.
I just felt that God wanted me to serve in other areas and
Yeah.
team to serve on. They certainly have plenty of great folks on there, so I don't think they need me, and I'd probably be a liability because that quality level's quite high. There's times where I think, man, I really wish I could be up there. It looks like so much fun.
Oh goodness. Yeah, yeah, they do have a lot of fun on the worship team, and it's awesome. But yeah, you get to have a lot of fun too, back in there and okay with us and then serving in your capacity. So you said you did a little bit, you do discipleship, and I know when I met you, it wasn't discipleship director, but you were leading like evangelism courses. So do you think how you think that kind of played in together, or you just always had a passion for discipleship? Where how did you get started there?
Sure. Yeah, I think the first time I led a small group was probably in college. I did an evangelism course at a big Baptist church in Auburn, Alabama. So it's a
Hmm.
very of the Bible Belt, and I think that was the first time I ever really led anything
Hmm.
of support. And I was surprised that I was asked to do it when I was in college, and then since then I've been in small groups and led them. And but this is the first time I've ever been on staff at a church. Um, I think you were there, when I was there was a position called elementary coordinator, and we kind of oversaw the
Yes.
cook room, and
Hmm.
so I did that for a little while. And yeah, it's been great. I think that one of the great things about our church is that there's leadership discipleship. So I feel like I've been called to grow in my leadership skills and delegation and following God and trying to lead others as we both try to follow Jesus together. So
Yeah.
I've all those opportunities. Yeah, I always wanted to do something like this. Wasn't sure it was ever going to happen, and happened maybe a little earlier than I expected.
Oh, come. That's a blessing. I think that's sometimes what we put our time frame on it, but then God's like, not today. Never gonna go now in this season. And I talked about that a little bit too. And even with the book, when you held it up, I still get tickled from seeing it. And you just never know where you're gonna end up when you say yes to God. So I just think it's such a blessing how we can pour out in different ways and still do things for the kingdom. So yeah, yeah, no, you always bless me with that in that aspect. But yeah, if you want to start with the book, I saw you bought your copy. Was there anything in there that kind of stood out to you that you may have had a question about?
I don't know about questions. I thought you were very clear. I was very challenged by how vulnerable you were. I thought that was great. There's so many intimate moments of your life, and
Mm-hmm.
a society like ours where everyone wants to put the highlights on a reel or social media. I think you really led us into some of your darker moments and how God worked through suffering. So that's powerful. I even like how you included early in your book that you were baptized, but maybe hadn't come into the fullness of obeying, but maybe there was just a little bit of seed planting there. And I think of my three kids, they were all baptized at the age of 6, and it makes me think, well, will there be an aha moment later, an epiphany where
Mm-hmm.
take it in for themselves, and they gave good answers at 6. So I didn't feel like I should withhold them from being baptized. I also liked how you used the English Standard Version trans.
Yes.
That's my favorite one. Not that really matters, but my understanding it's a little closer to the Hebrew and Greek meanings than some of our other translations.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
happened to notice that because it stood out to me.
Yeah.
Not that the other translations are bad. I've come to enjoy Living Translation, and that's good.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna be honest, Matt. You probably gonna be like, what? But my whole life, yeah, I reflected on that in the book. But yeah, my grandmother was really into the church, and I was around church, but I wasn't fully in church. And I think that's when I came here, and I'm gonna be honest, I got Bibles. I've always had Bibles around, but I never opened them.
Mm.
And I think I'm not the only one in the world that does that. Like somebody will give you one, you get it, but I never really cracked it open to make an understanding. Like I used to flip through. My grandmother had all kind of versions, but KGV back in the day was the thing for them. And it was hard to comprehend. It was hard to grasp onto the concept. What am I reading? And especially in a young age, it wasn't making much sense. But then when I came here, I was like, I'm gonna give this a try, especially when I saw this NLT version. And when I first got here, and I was like, oh man, I think I need to see this. This makes more sense. I think I can understand how to start this journey and how to appropriately understand, Jesus and everything else, and this whole storyline and of the Bible. And I haven't put it down since 2017, and I have evolved, and I think that's something too in our relationship with, faith. It evolves, and the more and more I kept reading, the more and more I wanted to learn more, and I started noticing that I needed different versions of the Bible. So ESV, then I got, the one with message and all the other versions because there's so much more that you can learn, and I feel like they all say something different. And then I found the Passion version too, and I was like, wait a minute. This Passion one was adding in a few more words sometimes that hit me in the heart a little differently. So I think we all find some way to learn the Bible, and I think when I came here, y'all guys made it very easy to want to read and want to dive in more into the Bible, and I really appreciate that because it did prompt me. I don't think if I wouldn't have came here and listened to that, I don't, the way that you guys do things, I don't know where I would be with reading it. So I have to be honest with that. This was in the past 6, 7 years that I've been really into it.
That's great. I think that's encouraging to any spiritual leader listening. You always
Yeah,
hire someone to get in front of God's word themselves. I mean, it's great to be in a group, but I think the both and is very important.
yeah, yeah. And then I was trying to figure out what was the other part you said just now.
Maybe the baptism part or the.
Oh, oh yeah, my baptism part. Yes. So I got baptized when I was, and I think I tried to share that in our meeting the other week. Was it about 11? Somewhere between 11 and 13. And at the time, like I said, I felt the call to come to Jesus, and there was but I didn't really understand it, but I didn't ask either.
Mhm.
And I think that sometimes, you know, we just go with the flow, and we say we understand, but we really don't. And I think sometimes that's where the vulnerability comes in to say, I feel something, I think I want to do this. And I did, and I got baptized, but it wasn't until I really had a impactful moment where I had to turn around and come back um to God when I was like, wait a minute. something about this second time coming back that I feel like I really need to get baptized, and this is the time to say yes and really dive into um, this relationship that I want to have with him, and what does that look like? And in my adulthood, it's something about that, me finding him in my adulthood, that really impacted me. But I do know when you said you had a conversation with your kids, like, can you walk that through for parents? Like, what did that look like for you on your end when you spoke with them about it?
Sure, sure. I think it was one as it was multiple years of conveying the gospel to understand that to get right with God the Father and have our sins washed away was no performance that we were going to put in, but rather to trust in Jesus' perfect
Mm,
life and really just the grace of the gospel, helping them understand that Jesus came for us what we couldn't do for ourselves, that he loved us so much he'd be willing to lay his life down for us, and that primarily at the core of the gospel is that you become a child of God, that is an object of his redeeming love. And then that's really where your worth comes from. That's where you can have standing with him, is because he's made you a child of God by something that Jesus did. And we're
mm,
receiving a free gift of grace. And I think they had come to understand grace, come to understand that it was, they were created people that owed their maker worth. And I think they had a good church to model that for them. So they saw other people become baptized. They saw other people living in such a way that it was clear that Jesus was at the center. And
mhm,
it's hard to say. I would not be surprised if one or two of my children, as teenagers or in their 20s, said, "Yeah, we had partial understanding of what we were doing, but now we're fully committed." And I know for me, being in college as a newly saved person, I grew up Roman Catholic. I didn't get saved till I was 17, and I remember being in college thinking these 5, 6, 7 year olds getting baptized. I didn't think that was okay at the time because I
mm,
them and how the Bible talks about, here's this water, what keeps them from being baptized if they're asking to do it. It was not a peer pressure thing. They didn't have friends getting baptized that day. We most certainly didn't push them. We put that out there as if you're believing this for yourself and you want to follow Jesus as master, then that's something that you would do as an act of obedience. But it was never pressured, it was never bribed, and they'd come to us with it. That's kind of how we would wait on them.
mm.
It was not you want to be baptized. It was more of when you take this step, this will be what you need to do. And because they came to us and articulated that well, we felt like, I'd rather make a mistake in the direction of faith than in unbelief. And if you did it wrong, we'll find out.
Yeah, but I love that though, that you, the kind of parenting here. I like that parenting advice, pouring into the parents' cup, is that you didn't pressure them, you didn't say you have to, because I said to, you were like, no, it's gonna mean more if
Mm-hmm.
we wait and have it come from you on your end, when you feel it, when you think you have it, and then talk to me so I can guide you through it as your parent. And like gracefully, like walk them through it humbly and gracefully in that moment, to say, and I can only imagine how that felt as a parent, to have that conversation and knowing that they're guiding their hearts and their minds that way at such a young age. I think that's, sometimes I think about that too. I'm like, I wish I would have caught on a little bit sooner, but never too late. Never too late. Never too late. To say, how you feel and build on your faith. So I think that's beautiful. And y'all are such wonderful examples. Such wonderful examples.
Oh,
So,
if you lived in our house, you might not say that, but
but
if our
that's okay. That's okay. We have moments, right? We're all human.
right.
We're all human. I keep telling. That's what I tell everybody on this podcast. I'm like, we're Christians, but we're a broken hot mess too. And things happen. I'm like, we're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna do things, and then some days I'm gonna look like the bad parent. When some days I'm gonna look like the good parent. So it just, you never know what you're gonna get. But it's not like it all magically goes away, because of the way we portray our faith out there in the world. And I think that sometimes what we get, right, we get that whole thing over us, like, oh, they have A, B, C, and D all together and they must have it all. But really, we live life just like everybody else. And we have to still lay those things down and ask for repentance sometimes, and forgiveness. So I think that's living humbly and open with that. So I think we do. But otherwise than that, We don't judge anybody for that. What we gonna do? We have our days. Yeah.
Try to be obedient even as you stumble, and
Yeah.
yeah, we're certainly not putting on a show when we're there Sunday or any other day.
Mhm.
Is what you get. I think people understand that we're comfortable in our own skin and we're vulnerable and we understand our shortcomings. And I do think that that's a very strong witness for Jesus, because we're not pretending that we're self-righteous or that we're put together or that we have it all together. And
No.
that makes for a safe person who is approachable and can help
Mhm.
them grow. That's been our desire is in our own discipleship to grow in emotional health, to be honest,
Mhm.
and to be the kind of people that would be safe and people would want to come to us for help and even bring their mess to us and feel like it wasn't going to be something that was judged, and seemed to have worked out.
Yeah, and I tell you what, Matt, something that kind of gets me sometime, and the enemy uses it on me. And I don't know if you heard this used with your conversations when you're discipling people, or pastoral, I'm a care team or wherever. But mine's is imposter. I feel he makes me make me want to feel like I'm an imposter because I do talk about positivity or trying to shine the light or bringing the big or whatever we have to do, for the kingdom. But then on the other side, it's like this line between, what we're talking about now, and then he uses that to kind of twist it into something else. So I didn't know, have you ever had anybody say, Matt, I feel this way, and have you had to advise them, and maybe over that, like how to balance the two?
Sure. Well, I think that sometimes we mistakenly label people as good Christians and bad Christians. The
Mm,
backslider who has made a profession of faith. Maybe they've fallen out of the practice of going to church on Sundays, not in a group, not serving, not giving, whatever it might be. And that certainly should be addressed. If someone's backsliding, we want to, by grace, restore them to community. But I think that it's also kind of a misnomer to say someone's a good Christian, because the whole point is that if we were really good at this, we wouldn't need the power of the Holy Spirit. We wouldn't need supernatural intervention. So to me, I don't really look at it as good and bad Christians. Sometimes
mm,
people that way are labeled, you that way, whoever it might be, and I just try to remind them that really it's Jesus living His life out in us. It's us surrendering each morning.
mm,
Something I really appreciate from an author named John Mark Comer, who wrote the book The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry and Live No Lies. It
mm,
talks about his discipleship journey with Jesus as an apprenticeship. And I'm imagining if I'm the
mm,
you don't get to do all the fun things each day. Sometimes you're going out and chopping down trees, to use kind of an old example, and you're doing all kinds of duties humbly that you
mm,
perhaps expect. You're not doing all of the fun word working, but all of the skill building and all of the character building, so that you'll be one day someone who can lead others. And I like the idea of just growing in our apprenticeship of Jesus and coming each day to see Him as, I'm going to do what you've called me today, instead of having my own agenda. And I think that that's really just a helpful thing. We're all in process. I don't have,
mm.
and I think that just provides a easier way to lead people, and also to lead yourself, in that you're not kind of putting on airs. You don't feel like you ever really have arrived, and I think that grows you in humility. And it's been pretty effective from the leaders that I've admired.
Yeah. Wow, Matt. Yeah, you see me over there. I'm like, apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And man, I hope everybody wrote that down. If not, rewind it. Like that was awesome. Yeah, because you always want to find a way to fight back on those thoughts. When they come in, because you're gonna get them. It's gonna happen. But I love that. I love that it's kind of a mindset perspective, how you look at it. Um, and I think that takes a little bit of the weight off, from people thinking that we have to have it all together. We have to be able to answer everything right then. We have to take. Somebody told me I have a purpose on my life, and I have to always look this way or that way or do it this way. But really, like you said, it's fresh and new every morning. I love that. Um, and we have to walk in it and make sure that we're doing it. But man, apprenticeship, that's beautiful. And I have to get that book. We'll have to write that title of that book down and check it out. That sounds great. And I bet the readers here and other author friends of mine will probably be like, oh, wait, I need to check that one out. So that's good. No, I love that. I
Right.
love that.
My original idea. Again, the book is called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, and it's pretty popular. So when you Google it or go on Amazon, it'll come right up. And John Mark Comer, he's a pastor, but just refreshing way of communicating. I think your listeners would enjoy. If they enjoyed your book, they'll enjoy him. He
Mm-hmm.
about his struggle, and he was immensely popular and successful very early in his journey. Just a brilliant guy, and has anxiety and had to step down from things, and just had some challenges in his life, but doesn't hide it, and did it in a very healthy way. And so I think that that's a great way to learn from someone who has had tremendous success on a big level, that
Mm-hmm.
is also dealing with some things in himself.
Hmm. Yeah, and like you said, more people are looking for stuff like that. Everybody's looking for examples. I feel like today, in today's world, we're looking for something different. Everybody's looking for somebody that's been through it. They hear it from the pulpit or otherwise, and they're like, "Oh yeah, they're gonna tell me that." But when there's somebody in front of you, like you said, that in a community or a friend you're having over coffee or talking to somebody over dinner or in those intimate moments, I think that's when we can learn from each other. So that's awesome. No, I think we're doing so much in this life that we just need that closeness or that one person, maybe two people that you can trust in your circle. It does, or somebody like or these type of resources, books, podcasts, but trustworthy books and podcasts too. Because I know a lot of times we have things out here, like you said, that are trying to shine the light, but may not be shining it appropriately. But I always tell people, do your research. Look into this stuff and then evaluate it appropriately. Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah, yeah. No, I love it. And then on my last podcast, Matt, I kind of talked about our class we're going through right now, making disciples. I think you been dropping some little nuggets in there too that have been really helpful for all of us. And I just love that class. Can you mind giving us a little overview of kind of what we do in there?
Sure, I'd be happy to. This is a pretty new class at our church. This is only our second session doing it. It's a 4-part class called Making Disciples. And the goal is to help you be more vibrant and clear about how you share your faith, but also how you're leading someone to follow Jesus maybe for the first time. They've made a profession of faith, and how do you build those skill sets with them, help them to understand what the gospel really is over and over again. It was written by Job with content, and so effectively they're using some of the material from the Every Nation founder Steve Morrell. He wrote a book called Wiki Church, and he talks about kind of these 4 E's, and let's see if I can get them in order. I think it's engage, establish, equip, and empowerment. And
Mm,
so anyhow, it's a way of kind of engaging people in the modern day about how you get in a spiritual conversation. How would you share the faith of Jesus? I'm sorry, the story of Jesus well, so that someone could understand it even in modern terms. And I think it's a very practical class. I think
yeah.
people have really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed teaching it and being a part of it, and
Mm-hmm.
hoping that it's in people's minds so that it doesn't just stay there on a Tuesday night, but maybe think about a person in your life where I could maybe try this out, where take that next step in obedience to say, I'm going to put myself out there a little bit. And even today, I met a security guard for the first time, and I just said, "Hey, how can I pray for you?" Clear.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm going to have time for probably a full conversation, but people receive that, and I may work at this establishment at some point, so she may remember that about me, or who knows
yeah.
that about today, not because I want attention, but it kind of puts a rock in their shoe, and they're going to maybe be thinking about it that day, and
Mhm.
with God, who is Jesus. And so yeah, just seeing people in our lives as people that God may have put there on purpose, and maybe I wasn't planning on meeting that person today. I didn't know they even had security at this place that I was visiting. And yeah, so what has been impactful, particularly to you, Sheena, of the Making Disciples course?
Um, I tell you what, I look forward to most of the time is, well, besides your teaching, because I like when once you get going. I tell you, that's how I'll be honest. The highlight is when you get going, and I can tell you're like, oh yeah, I'm excited. Like you can tell how you get excited about certain parts of it and sharing on it in it. But when we get to the end and we have that intimate time to pray over each other or pray for the next person or pray for that person in each other's lives, I think that's beneficial. I think the course has been laid out in a way that it does feel like once you take, I swear, TNLC always, I'm so proud of it because they have like starting point and then you lead into, now you have making disciples. The course on, reading the Bible, but I feel like we just lay it out in a way that it doesn't feel intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I love about it. It's not like overly complicated language. It's just what the gospel is. Here's some tips on how you can say it and use it like that day, like you said, right then you walked in, you next thing you're like, hey, can I try this? Let me see if I can, maybe that person that was on my heart, maybe I should reach out to them. But I think that was the best thing about this class, and the most impactful part is at first I was like, I'm gonna be honest, I was a little bit nervous. I was like, what is this about? What are we gonna be doing? I'm like, I have no idea what we're gonna. I mean, am I ready for this kind of class? Like, I kept thinking, and then they're like, it's for everybody. I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna check it out. But it's always that first getting past the door still, and then I'm like, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. Be confident in being fine. But yeah, it hasn't been bad at all, and I like hearing everybody's stories. That's been good to see people at my table had not even were hesitant to pray out loud. They were like, we're new to this. So it was like you have Dave Bolton, there he Pastor Dave, and then you got, me, and then there's Jay, and then you have two other people who are like, I just got started. I have no idea. This is good for me. And it's not nice to see that we got like all these different arrays of, places in faith in one place. And I think it's a blessing. We're all learning from each other.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like people's testimonies were really powerful. I didn't know some of people's backstories, and
Yeah.
had a particularly what's the right word? I've had a particularly energetic class. Not that the first time wasn't that way. We had a more thoughtful, kind of quieter people. But this group has a lot of personalities and energy, and I feel that when you're up there in terms of how people are answering questions and getting involved, and so that's always fun because you get some humor and some enthusiasm from them. And you guys have been a great class. I'm sad to see it up tomorrow night. However, I also see it triumphantly, like, wow, we've done this twice, and we'll put, I guess, something a little over 50, 60 people through it, somewhere in there, at least people who've gone to classes. And we want to get everyone through all four, but we understand with the summer and different times when it's offered.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually something that stood out to me about your book, about your experience of finding a smaller community that is in some churches would call it a small group. We call them
Mm-hmm.
groups. But your whole return to church that first Sunday and the trepidation you had and your description of that, I think that while it was poignant and relatable to a lot of people who maybe grew up in church and feel like all the eyes are on them, that they're going to be judged and everyone's going to know everything about you, which is not true.
Yeah.
Even you going to having the courage to go to your first small group at this new church, and then even trying to making disciples was, I wouldn't have expected you perhaps to be intimidated by that because of your time on stage and you've led,
Mm-hmm.
but it just goes to show you that I think we're always having to push back, or that this is going to be too much for us, or we don't belong there. And
Yeah. Oh, yes.
that's
Come on, Matt. That's the word right there. I think that's the fight we always have is like, do we belong in the room? Yet. Is
Mhm.
it time yet? Oh, you hit the nail on the head. Mm-hmm.
Right. I think, but the interesting thing is if you were to poll people at TNLC, they see you as a core person, as a leader, as someone they look up to, as being faithful. And I think, maybe they're looking at themselves and saying, I don't know that I do, but in some ways people have seen you as someone who's proven themselves. That's how I see you. I not,
Oh, thank you.
not expect, not surprised that you would have signed up for the class. And
Mm.
but it's really interesting, our perception of what people would think of us and what the actual perception is. And
Oh, yeah.
it's really fascinating. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, yeah, I always tell Jay Sean, I'm like, I have conversations with people, and a lot of times I'm like, they really see me completely different than how I see myself a lot of times. And it's because I'm still walking in this thing. I'm still getting used to it. And I try to keep it humble. I'm like, I don't have it all together, and I don't want anybody to ever think that, but I owe God everything. And that's why you see me there. I'm there faithfully. I'm like, I told him yes. And I mean, I got out the driver's seat and I'm like, here you are. I said that you want to take the lead, take the lead. Jesus, let's go. And I keep trying to keep that mindset with everything that I do, even though sometimes I'm like, I tell people all the time, I have my times when I push back or I have delayed. delayed obedience, but it's not, like you said, not perfect. And I thank you. And I hope I have been there long enough that people can trust and know that, I'm gonna be there, and that even doing this, I was hesitating doing this. I was hesitating writing the book because I didn't want to offend anybody at church. I didn't want anybody to be like, "Oh, Sheena wrote this book. Oh, what's in it? Oh, it's this or it's that, or she's online talking." Now that's something else for her to do, and it was like, oh, she's the people in the community are gonna hear it or see it. And I was very surprised yesterday, when Pastor Clayton actually brought it up in the service, and I was like,
That's a big shout out. I mean, you're talking about maybe 500 people hearing about it. I was listening to it this morning because we were in New Life Kids yesterday, and so I didn't
yeah,
get live, and I listened to it and I thought how interesting the day I'm on this podcast that he gave you a big shout out, and how important you are to him that he would put that in his sermon. It may have been extemporaneous. I don't know. I didn't
me
read,
either. I don't know.
but it doesn't really matter. And at the end of the day, you didn't do this to get attention. I think
Thank you.
your heart was in the right direction. And if people think that, then they need to get to know you before they say something like that, because that's a kind of a false accusation. I've heard no one say anything like that. I think if anything, they might look at this book and go, "Man, Sheena put the time to write a book." Maybe they feel for themselves like, "What am I accomplishing if she's this mom who's a super mom and works and takes care of her kids and her family and does all these things and wrote a book?" I think if anything, they'd feel inferior and defensive. But the way I
Oh,
look at it is, I celebrated it when you did that. I thought, "Wow, that's so great! What a neat thing to do!" And I was thinking of even sharing this in an upcoming sermon. But when someone else wins an award at our
mm,
winter formal, I feel like I won the award. When someone gets recognized, and I always think they're appropriate choices, I just think, yeah, you know what, they should be honored. That they are. I do see God working in them. And when someone wins, a team member of the year, it
yeah,
makes me want it because I'm so filled with joy that someone else is being recognized, and it's so freeing to not have to be under the bondage and slavery of selfishness as one of our principal sins, and to when God frees you of that, and you can be joyful when other people succeed, then you're really free, and
yeah.
that's worth its weight in gold.
Amen. Amen. I believe in that. And it's so nice, like just reaching out to people now and like you saying, being free about it. I think that shows God. That gives the Jesus. You're showing Jesus. That thing we were talking about in class. It doesn't have to be this picture. But sometimes when you show up and you do those kind of things, they're like, wait, that's kindness? Wait a minute, where'd that kind of light come from? It's like, so people are so surprised by kindness nowadays. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's an unfortunate thing, but when it happens, like I even asked the guy, I think after church, and we went to lunch, and all I said was he walked up and he was trying to introduce himself because he was the manager, and I asked him, well, I said, how are you doing today?
Mm-hmm.
He asked us, and he was like caught off guard, and he was like, well, wait a minute, well, thank you for asking. And I'm like, see, those little things you just never know because people aren't thinking they're thinking they're serving something towards you, but when you come back at them, they don't know how to, ask, answer it or be in that moment. But yeah, that little glimpse, I think that's what kindness, and that shows him, it shows something different. So yeah, and I appreciate it. I was very shocked, like I said, back to Pastor Clayton. I'm thankful and grateful to know that my leader has heard something and he wasn't like you know thrown off by it, but I'm appreciative of everybody at TNLC and that confidence they do have in me, and you guys that have been around me and kind of know. So it's nice, and I love it. I really appreciate it. It keeps me going. Keeps me going. So
And even if people who don't know you well have some negative opinion, that's really between them and God. It's not something that you're responsible for. You don't control how people think. But I think if people took the time to get to know you, I think they'd have a really hard time coming down hard on you. I just, have any glaring character flaws that come out publicly. And so I think it's one of those balances where, you don't want to be that person who says, "I don't care what anyone thinks of me," because that could
right.
be prideful and we don't take constructive criticism well. But on the other hand, I want to be that person who's so insecure that we're living up and down about if someone brings something critical to us.
Mhm.
I think that's a sign of Christian maturity is you even invite constructive criticism in your life so that you could see a blind spot, but you
Mhm.
wouldn't have already seen, because by definition you can't see your own blind spots. And
Right.
I had one of the discipleship group leaders come up to me yesterday and in a nice way, say, the email wasn't clear enough that you sent out when you're asking this. And, in my mind, of course, it was perfectly clear. But
Right.
to her, the language wasn't such that, and I'm happy that she brought it up because I learned something. And I was like, thank you so much for giving me some negative feedback, even because generally people will tell you nice things and they may be frustrated with you behind your back, but don't have the confrontational skills or the graciousness to bring that to you, or
Yeah.
don't want to make it awkward and whatnot. But I'm not going to grow, and no one's going to grow if we don't have other insight about, hey, this is just a little something you could work on. I've noticed.
Yes.
I thought, man, that's a good thing. It's a good thing when you can grow that way.
Yeah, and I think in the book you probably read about that, but that's actually where I came from. That whole part about not caring people anything, and I tell people that all the time. I've had that hardened heart, and man, what a bondage to try to get out of. Um, but I'm grateful that I did, and it. I guess I got to the point where I'm like making sure that I don't lean back on that. So I try to live now as open and honest as I can, but not as hard and unloving as it what I told my girlfriend the other day on another podcast when I was talking was I had to shape the edges. I had to round this thing out a little bit, and find a middle ground, and that middle ground was Jesus for me, and say, hey, I need help. I need help doing this. I'm not doing this very well. But it was funny that the people around me were, I could tell them now, I'm like, y'all just put up with me at that point. I just really feel like y'all put up with me. But now I'm like, and then also too, and I look up back on that with my kid, like Jaden, he's 10 and he got to see that version of me, now. And now he gets to see this new version of me. And I so wish he would have had that a long time ago, but I do my best to do better now, with that in parenting and everything and being there for him. But then, I think about the poor little Jax. He came in and now he's just getting that one version that is here. But you live and you learn. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm thankful that his little heart is forgiving and loving. And he knows that, we came from a good place. And here we are. So, yeah, I'm trying.
Parenting is a work in progress. That's for sure.
Straight up. Straight up. They talking about a manual. That's what we needed. Can somebody tell me? A little manual would have been nice, but that's okay. We
Yeah.
live and learn. Live and learn.
The manual is there's so many different kinds of kids, and each kids
I
have
know.
different, you have two different children, and from my little interaction with both of them, you're going to have to parent them differently. They're different. Like, they're both great people. You love them with equal magnitude, as I tell with my kids, but
Yeah.
you have to love and discipline them differently for their own growth and to shepherd their heart. And yeah, and I've read a number of Christian parenting books, and that have to spend some time praying on your knees and saying, God, I need discernment for this child. I need help to deal with this situation. And
Mhm.
not that it's bad to read books and to get wisdom, but sometimes you just need to hear directly from God about a particular situation.
Mhm.
Even getting help with counseling, whatever it might be. But
Mhm.
it's an
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And then having that, you have to be humble enough to say, "I need help too." That's another thing that I think a lot of us are having problems with. Is having that part about how do we say, even in parenting, we need some advice. We need some help. Not even just with faith, but just my everyday. I need help. So being vulnerable enough to say that to some people around you, I think that's something that we got to live through too.
mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's amazing how often I'll try to correct something in my child, and I'll say that's exactly how I interact with God, my Father. It's like they're like little sin mirrors. I feel like I didn't know what a selfish, sinful person I was until I got married, and because you don't really have another way of seeing it, and then
Yeah.
you see that the ways you correct them, I'll say, why don't you just trust me? And I find it interesting that that's often a Holy Spirit comment toward me is, why wouldn't you trust me? Haven't I been faithful and reliable every other time?
Ooh.
And I'll say that to them, and immediately I'm cut to the heart. I thought
Oh yeah. Yep. You said I'm like, I never thought about it like that, but that's true. Oh.
it is, but it's good. It's good. It
Yeah.
keeps us humble.
Hmm.
Just keeps us reminding ourselves where who we are and who He is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Wow. I'm probably gonna be more like looking into that now, watching me like, oh yeah, what did I say? What did I say earlier?
Mm.
Now I see. I get it. I understand. But yep. Well, Matt, any other questions for me? Anything else that we you may want to dive into while we're on here?
Oh, not particularly. I was reading through the book again and reminding myself of the timeline of your son Desmond,
Oh yes.
and I know that was a very painful encounter, and so I was because for some reason I thought there was a different birth order there, and I maybe you've covered this on a previous podcast that I missed. Have you talked at all about how you would recommend healing from a loss like that? And because there may be people listening who maybe don't know that story, or maybe need some direction about how to heal from a loss like that. That's a pretty big moment in your
Yes. It is. I'm gonna be honest. A lot of times people don't bring it up. It is like hmm, I don't want to say an elephant in the room, but I would say people avoid it like the plague.
life. Hmm.
Nobody wants to address it. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's awkward. But I appreciate you bringing it up. Nobody's really asked. But no, I don't mind sharing it. So back in Jay Sean and I got married in 2010, and then right after, we found out that I was pregnant, and he wasn't living with me in Richmond. He was living in Virginia Beach. And then when I went to one of the appointments, everything was looking good. Everything was fine. And then we got to about, I think about the 5 month mark. And I was at work. I used to work in the hospital as well. And I was walking around and I was like, something doesn't feel right. And come to find out, um, his little bag of fluid had came out, and they called this symptoms, signs. And funny, I had just went to the doctor on my birthday
Mm.
to see the baby, and everything was good. He checked the cervix, no problem. So this was like 2 weeks after that, when this happened, which I didn't understand, and I still am working through that sometimes, but it happens. But yeah, so it had slipped through a little bit, and so they rolled me up to um OB, and that was like high priority at that time. And they put me in Trendelenburg, which means I was basically upside down like this for a couple weeks,
Mm.
trying to see if gravity would do its own thing, with this incompetent cervix. And then I remember this doctor saying, well, you can have a surgery and we can try to do this manually and return him to where he should be, or we could wait it out. She gave me, and then at 23, 24 years old, giving me all these bad things that could happen. I was thinking, well, let's see. Maybe we should wait it out instead of like, she was like, because if it happens instantly, he's gone instantly. And that's all I remember. And I was like mortified. So I did wait it out again. So I was hanging in there. I think we got to, it was like 19 weeks and 4 days. And we ended up ordering out that night because I had pretty much been in the hospital for days and days now. So we were ordering dinner, and I decided to get some pizza. And Matt, I would never forget it and go down the history. And I'm surprised I still even eat pizza, but just a little tickle in my throat, one cough. All this time I had tried my best not to cough because I didn't know what was going to happen. And I coughed, and then my water broke.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so they were like, don't panic. Nothing might happen. They kept checking the baby. The baby was fine. And then, yeah, the next day, um, I started having pressures and my body started doing what it was supposed to do. And they told me there was nothing they could do, to stop it, to help him, to save him. So he came at 19 weeks and 4 days old.
Mm.
They told me if he would have made it to 22, 23 weeks, they probably could have saved him. Unfortunately, I went to like what was it? My doctor, when I went for Jaden, he was saying that he claimed there could have been something done, but you know what? Those are the times when you have to say, "Well, I can't do anything about it now." I can't look back on that now. So that was a pretty dark time. Planning for a baby, buying all the stuff for a baby, and then leaving the hospital with no baby. Um, and I had to give my baby up, which I don't know if people know that or not. When you have a baby in the hospital, and I don't know how it is here in Florida, but that was back in Virginia, they don't just come and take your child from you. When your child passes away, he stayed in the room with me until they told me I had to call them for them to come get him out of the room.
Mm.
That was a whole experience of me having to say, "That's it. This is the finale. I will not leave this hospital with my child. I have to take my child and give him to you, and you're gonna take him to the morgue." That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that my mom says to this day she'll never forget the shrill scream that came out of me when I saw them take him away. And I told her, I said, I don't think I'll ever forget it. It's never gonna be something that I ever let pass me by. The fact that I had to experience that, and I don't, like I said, I don't wish that on anybody. And then I went through, funeral and things like that. We ended up not having a service or anything. We just, kind of had him, cremated. He's here at the house,
Mm-hmm.
and we were celebrating birthdays and things like, normal. He had a day, and that was his day. He had a name. We still talk about him as that's your older brother. I started introducing Jaden to him, as your brother would have been here, but he's in heaven. But the healing for me started, I guess, with that. Just finding a way. I couldn't bear the thought of him being buried somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like having him home with me was a way for me to get through it. Somebody else may not work for them, but I could not bury my child. Just it was not something I could live with. Um, but I say it time was the only thing that kind of helped. I would say time, and then I thought, you know, holidays, holidays and birthdays, and seeing my other children grow up doesn't make it easier.
Mm.
But I would say you have to just give yourself the space and time to work through all the feelings, and don't ever hesitate to tell somebody how you're feeling, because I think sometimes we let those feelings bottle up on the inside. Um, and then, even causing me and Jay Sean to kind of battle it out a little bit because he wasn't grieving the way that I was grieving.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't think he understood exactly how the process would have happened to us. But yeah, I think there's more loss in the world in this way, um, that we don't talk about. But I wish there was more of a space to make it relevant and make it not such a taboo topic. But um, yeah, I would say to any parent that's lost a child, and then sometimes even on my end, Matt, a lot of people say my loss was irrelevant, because the child wasn't old enough.
Wow.
So I've had that happen too from the community of parents that have lost someone, because the child wasn't living. Like, something happened to Jackson or Jaden, people would be like, "Oh yeah," but they think because this child was, and I know as a doctor you probably understand what I'm saying. So it's like just because my child was 5, 6 months in utero, and then I had him, they kind of try to look at it like it's not the same, but I'm like, a loss is a loss. The child is a child, and no, my child is not here. And I'm like, I clearly. Oh, and I didn't say this too. When he was born, he actually lived to be about 4 hours. 4 hours with us. So again, I had to watch this happen.
Mm.
We had to sit with him until he passed away.
Mm.
So not only did I sit with him the night before to watch him pass away, but I had to physically choose to give him up. So it's a different experience. Um, Again, don't wish it on anybody, but I would just say take your time, moms and dads. Take your time and then tell people what you need. And then I also saw something the other day, and I wish people would have did that more. You know, people ask you, what do you need in that moment? And I wish people would have just did things. Even though I said nothing, I just wish somebody would have sat at my house sometime, or, you know, just been in the room, even though they say I don't, you know, I don't quite know what to say to you in this time, or they'll say it'll get better, or things like that. I would just say be there for the person.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Even when it seems like you don't really know how to handle that weight. Your presence sometimes is all we need.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, deepest condolences. I think he had personhood. He lived for 19 and a half weeks. And then, like you said,
Yeah.
outside, absolutely. And, I know this has become unpopular, but I mean, a baby's life begins. It's not even debated among secular people. It's just the biology of it. It's how God designed the universe. Is that life begins with that first cell and then divides quickly, and you're off to the races. But no, I can understand why you'd feel that loss. I've never been through that myself.
Hmm.
Deepest condolences. I can't imagine
Yeah.
have been and still must be sometimes.
Yes, especially like I said, I go through first days of school. He didn't have those. You know, he's not gonna have marriages. He's not gonna have. There's no grandkids. There's no proms. There's no graduations. But I'm walking through that with the other kids. I'm like, um, there is so much he missed. You know that I missed. I'm gonna miss out on with him. And you know the fact that him and Jaden aren't that far apart. You know, Jaden's 10. You know, Dez would have been right before him. So I wonder how, if it would have been that way, how it would have been to have them together, and or all three of them. Oh my goodness, I can only imagine the chaos that ensues with three boys in the house. And throwing my husband would have been a hectic thing. But yeah, no, it's, and then I think about it now. Especially with my grandmother passing away, that was a big hit in my life. And now I think about them being together. They finally got to meet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hopefully, I pray every day. I'm like, I pray y'all just she came on in and they finally got together, because I was like, that was the one thing too. She was incapable of getting to the hospital at that time, so they never got to meet. Um, so yeah, yeah, a lot of heaviness in that, but the reflection on it, I didn't see God in that moment, but that's what I tried to tell everybody in the book. Is now that I can look back over it, he was there. The grace to get through that, the strength that he gave me to kind of get through that. um I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I can see him, in the hard things. Now that I can look back on it, it's just, it wasn't like I was sitting in bed and I was like, this is the worst thing I ever went through, and like saying bad things or anything like that. It actually was kind of peaceful
Mm-hmm.
in the moment, now that I think back on it. And I was like, that is interesting that I was laying in bed, like, just peacefully being there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, having to go through the rest was a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, sounds like could be very traumatic, and that's understandable.
Mhm. Mhm. Very traumatic.
I know that you beat yourself up about coughing, but it'd have been pretty hard not to cough at all for 20 more weeks or whatever it would have been. And there's a lot of ifs, ands, or what. But at the end of the day, God's sovereign, and that's a hard pill to swallow. That,
Mhm.
but it's interesting to me when you think about the gospel that God the Father knows what it's like to lose a dearly beloved Son, and I'm assuming that comforts you. I know it comforts me when I think about suffering.
Mhm.
That yes, He could have prevented it. Yes, He allowed it. I'm not saying that He, but somehow He suffers with you. That it hurt Him too to see you hurt, and that's comforting, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and I think that's another way to put it, right? I think I saw something the other day on that, not about me, but just somebody was saying that. Well, if your God is your God, and why does He let that stuff happen? Like, why did that do that? That's always a question, and I bet you, at discipling people, you probably have heard that before. Well, why does that bad stuff happen, or why did He not save this child, but He'll save this child? Um, I mean, like you said, we live in, I like this. I think you said this, and it might have been in class or it may have been somewhere else when you were teaching, but I think it was like, I think you were saying that this is like a broken world, so things are going to happen in this broken world. And
Mhm.
but like you said, He's going to walk with us and comfort us through it. And I go back to, every time I think about that too, when we think about broken stuff that happens to us or happens to good people, and sometimes I think about the thorn. I'm not going to take it out, but I'm going to help you through it.
Mhm.
Mm.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. I don't have a good answer of why
I
that.
know, right?
That's maybe sometimes we ask the wrong questions, but it does comfort me to think that you're being reunited with Him in the kingdom of God would mean that you would actually have more time with Him
Mm.
without Him, which is pretty incredible when you think about eternity, future. That you'd actually have more time with Him. I mean, granted, of course, anyone would have chosen to enjoy a full life and that, the both and, but it's nice to know that He's not gone forever. We don't,
Right.
that we die and that's the end. That's not the narrative. Jesus rose from the dead and that changes everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful way to think about it too, Matt, is that, once this is all said and done, and we do get to be with each other,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
beauty of that,
Sure.
not only that reuniting with Him and family whew, and
And other
being
people
even,
who've experienced that same loss, as you're aware, it's been something that has become
yeah.
a common thing at TNLC, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
never wish that on anyone else, but hopefully you never have those feelings like God was judging you or punishing you. That you could see it happen to all kinds of people. People
Yeah.
faithfully, people who are not, and people in your family of faith. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, actually, I beat myself more than me turning to God and saying, "Oh, it was His fault." It was more me talking. Finally, you go through those moments during grief of it was my fault. My body failed me. Especially having incompetent cervix. I'm like, what is that, and where did it come from? And I still don't think it's talked about enough. But I'm like, I tell people what I have, and they're like, "What is that?" What do you mean? You should know. As a woman, you should know. It's an option. It's an option. Um, but yeah, it's a lot of conversations to be had about that and what we can do. I don't know if there's ever going to be a preventative for it. But yeah, I did beat myself up a lot, but I was so glad to get past that and realizing that I did not do that. That cough, like you said, I kept thinking about that. I was like, is there anything else I could have did to stop that cough? I mean, I tried laying back in the bed. I tried to stop. Yeah, I mean, you could have saw me, man. I was like scratching my throat, like trying to make sure I didn't do it. Hmm.
sure,
That was the day.
right,
Mm-hmm.
sure, yeah, it's hard not to beat ourselves up because you just like to think of any other scenario, and but then
Mm-hmm.
happen the next day or the one after that. It's hard. It is hard.
It is. It is. It really, really is. Yeah. But no, well, I thank you, Matt. I thank you for this conversation and thank you for asking that question. I love when people make it sometimes pick the harder topics or the harder subjects or things like that to address in conversations and making it okay to talk about. It's a blessing to have this open space to talk freely about it. And you never know, somebody like you said, that pretty much might be somebody that's like, oh, wait a minute, she went through that. I didn't know that, and I did too. Or it can help somebody. Maybe somebody say, "Hey, Sheena, can you help me? I haven't dealt with that. I don't know how to deal with it um, yet." So I'm thankful.
Yeah, we appreciate you being open enough to talk about it, and I think hopefully that's part of your healing journey, and maybe
Yeah.
you modeled vulnerability for someone else, and that'll help them take that next step to say, I need to talk this out with somebody, and
Hmm.
protect you. Who knows? But yeah, and I would have completely understood if you said, "I'd prefer not to talk about it." You have every right to have boundaries, but I had a feeling that engaging that would be a good thing, and it's certainly not easy to talk about. You're right. I think
Yes.
you may be making someone cry, and how do you recover from that? Like you did something wrong, but
Mm-hmm.
I think people need to cry. I think they need to grieve, and that's how you move forward and get healed.
Yeah, healthy emotions. Yeah, I think we need to get back to that too, man. I agree. It's okay to cry. It's okay to grieve. That's why I said people told me. I think somebody when my grandmother passed away and told my mom, "Well, why are you crying?" And like sometimes you catch people asking that, like, why are you upset? Why are you crying? She wouldn't want all that crying, or you wouldn't. I'm like, you're crying because it's a loved one. You you love the person. What do you think? It's lost. It's lost. But some people don't know what to say. I always say sometimes we just don't know what to say. We try. But you just never know. You just never know. Yep. No. Well, all right, Mr. Matt, let me see. Is there any word of wisdom for people as we wrap this up? One thing you would tell people to take away with them about faith, about their journey, about the goodness of Jesus, that they can pour into their cups with this week.
I would just say I think it's helpful to be grateful and maybe even bring out a piece of paper and say, here are the things I'm grateful for, and challenge yourself to write out 50 things. And sometimes when we have a bad attitude in our house, it could be a parent or a child, we'll go around the table and we'll go, each of us will take a turn saying something we're grateful for, and we'll go around multiple times. And it's amazing how it squashes that negativity. Almost like if you have an attack from the enemy, you start praising or you start reading the scriptures, you start singing a hymn, whatever it might be, it just has a way of changing the atmosphere. So I think gratitude is something that I know I'm struggling with at times and fail. What's one of the confessions I make daily is a sin of ingratitude, and it's not that I don't ever spend time thanking God or speaking that, but something that's just missing in our culture that is always wanting more. And if God could give us the gift of contentment, that's actually a better gift than the health, wealth, and prosperity that everyone wants. So the gift of contentment is truly valuable and precious.
That is beautifully said, Matt. That is beautifully said. Yeah, no, I love it. I love that. Well, you guys, I hope that you had a great episode 3 with us. I am just so thankful for Mr. Matt coming to be with us today and sharing and asking questions and giving us something to take away and look at our cups and maybe evaluate them a little bit more, because I mean gratitude and a little bit about parenting, just life. You guys, we're here to do life with you. We're here to be filled together. So I hope that you will come back again and check out another episode. Also, again, thank you, Matt, for dropping by. I am so grateful for this opportunity to be here with you guys. I just want to say thank you for continuing to check us out. Can't believe I found out we're at 90 days, you guys. 90-day anniversary of Be Filled. I can't believe 90 days has flown by already. And I look forward to doing this more with you. So, as always, I hope to see you next week. And from now on, make sure that you be filled. I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. It was an honor.